The United Arab Emirates, home to ridiculously lavish lifestyles, every girl's dream Instagram location, and the most insane displays of wealth you'll probably ever see. It's mostly known for its two highly distinguished and financially affluent states, Dubai and Abu Dhabi, although both at one particular time being nothing but endless seas of baking sand and warring tribes fighting over disputed borders. All exploration in the country began as far back as prior to World War I, with British contractors studying the composition of seabeds and unknown prospects for nearly 40 years before the first commercial-sized breakthrough in the state of Abu Dhabi, instantly turning the ruling family of the formerly economically depressed and scarce region into millionaires almost overnight. Of course, British petroleum giants BP were the first in line for major commercial exportation as the British Empire's main player. To give you an idea of just how rapidly the discovery of oil had impacted the region economically, the ruling Al Nahyan family, who we'll discuss further in just a minute, was making well into the hundreds of millions a year well before the 1980s. In stepped a man by the name of Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, amazing pronunciation, I know, who previous to this massive boom was second in charge to his ruling older brother, who simply was inefficient in benefiting his people with their newfound fortunes. With heavy public demand and a hush-hush coup, Sheikh Zayed led the state of Abu Dhabi into a modern age that saw infrastructure that had never been seen in the region before. Public hospitals, airports, schools, housing, roads and motorways, wharfs for trade, and of course, humongous oil refineries. All the necessities of a now modernizing city was pioneered largely by the man they call their founding father. Their oil reserves are so large to this day it makes up more than 40% of the state's GDP, with over 2.8 million barrels per day in 2020 alone. Moving on to their arguably more famous and extravagant neighbours, Dubai, you'll be surprised to find out that they didn't have the same luck in discovering endless commercial quantities of oil. After a long time of exploration and study, the state of Dubai took another path to becoming the billionaire lifestyle haven it markets itself to be today. Needless to say, the state also began as a harsh, desolate landscape that offered little to no economic benefits to its custodians nor its rulers, the Al Maktoum family, a family that ruled over Dubai. In stepped a man another founding father, Sheikh Rashid bin Saeed Al Maktoum, who became the ruler of Dubai in 1958 and embarked on an unconventional route to paving a prosperous economic future for his state. Keep in mind now that at this point the United Arab Emirates is yet to unionize until 1971, when several of the surrounding emirates banded together with these two states or emirates to create the nation of the United Arab Emirates. With no oil to help, Sheikh Rashid utilized relationships built with the British Empire to secure tens of billions of dollars in loans that would go towards establishing solid infrastructure, attract foreign trade and investments, establish state-owned utility companies, and a rapidly blossoming tourism industry. Although being looked at as a very unconventional path to be taken at the time, his foresight to turn his desolate landscape into a bustling metropolis of trade and one of the most visited places on earth definitely seems to have paid off, especially as the world moves away from fossil fuel-led economies and looks to more renewable sources of energy. As a result, oil makes up, believe it or not, only 1% of Dubai's GDP, and their ability to attract foreign investments with incentives such as tax breaks and zero restrictions on foreign business activities in certain areas is so attractive. 20% of all foreign direct investments can be accounted for in one such area named Jafza, producing $80.2 billion worth of non-oil trade per year. One can argue that with such a futuristic outlook on the stability of his region's economy, he's placed it on a more promising track to maintaining its glitz and glamour for a long time to come. Each state has its own sovereign wealth fund, with the state of Abu Dhabi alone holding a reported $875 billion in assets, while its famous cousins Dubai hold an estimated $239 billion. The considerable difference can definitely be put down to the cash flow found in all that black gold over in Abu Dhabi. As rightful rulers to their respective states, the Al Nahyan family of Abu Dhabi and the Maktoum family of Dubai are pretty much set for life, with all state-owned property within their jurisdictions essentially belonging to the family name. Yes, even the assets reported in the respective sovereign wealth funds. However, the royal family makes up only a certain percentage of the nationals within the United Arab Emirates, while the vast majority of inhabitants, approximately a massive 80%, are foreigners residing within the states. So as you can imagine, given a sovereign wealth fund is a product of the state, each family member probably has a hefty amount to their name simply for being alive. To get an idea for yourself, an Emirati citizen, not necessarily a family member, living within Abu Dhabi is entitled to roughly $1.6 million within the Abu Dhabi Wealth Fund. Surprisingly, the economic policies haven't changed all that much from the plans first put in place by the proclaimed founding fathers of each respective state. And that's fair enough. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. However, it's safe to say Sheikh Rashid's vision of Dubai and turning it into a bubbling centre of tourism has definitely been realised, while Abu Dhabi's stability is held in large by the state's ability to continue to produce oil and invest wisely with the money it produces. On the topic of economic policies, however, it is worth mentioning the similarities that can sometimes be found in other parts of the world that also suddenly find themselves stuffed with cash due to an abundance of oil within their borders. One such example is Norway, who currently own the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world, ahead of superpowers China and even America. Norway's fortunes were ironically discovered just around the same time Abu Dhabi did, in 1969, and immediately put in place a rigorous economic policy to ensure their newfound fortune paid dividends for several generations ahead. They didn't take the path of building the largest tower in the world or building massive attraction parks. Instead, they invested it into a wealth fund, which in turn invests in foreign countries and industries that pay them dividends year in, year out, while also setting the standard for social security for its citizens that's hard to find anywhere else in the world. While how they found that oil is a story on its own, it's safe to say Abu Dhabi and Norway both started with the same asset and took very different paths depending on how they felt they were positioned prior to their discovery and what they felt would be the best economic structure for their future. In mentioning Abu Dhabi, it's the capital of the United Arab Emirates and oftentimes find itself having to bail out the other Emirates within its country when they find themselves in a bit of a pickle. An example of that would be the crippling effect of the global financial crisis and how Dubai suddenly found itself unable to complete the construction of the Burj Al Khalifa until Big Brother Abu Dhabi came and gave them some allowance money and demanded the structure be named by the oldest living member of the Al Nahyan family, Sheikh Khalifa. Furthermore, there's another major economic advantage within the United Arab Emirates that's definitely worth mentioning, and that's their ability to import an insanely efficient workforce into their borders. Specifically, labourers from Southeast Asian countries such as India, Pakistan and Bangladesh undisputedly fuel major industries such as real estate and retail in a way that's hard to find anywhere else in the world. Pulling up the statistic mentioned earlier, over 80% of the inhabitants within the United Arab Emirates are foreigners, and the vast majority within that statistic are foreign neighbours originating from those countries. However, in 2017, a new bill was introduced into the country which protected these labourers from exploitation, which had previously drawn massive criticism from the international community. Specifically, the Federal National Council passed a bill which ensured foreign workers got 30 days paid vacation per year, 1 day off per week, medical insurance, and a contract prior to starting work. The very basics. You can only imagine what conditions were like prior to this bill. Every significant structure that comes to mind when the United Arab Emirates is mentioned is essentially possible due to the manpower found in that subset of the country's foreign residents. However, whether or not they've reached the pinnacle of tourist attractions through exploitive means, it's safe to say they've positioned themselves in a relatively secure economic position for now. Like the saying goes, nothing lasts forever, and is most definitely the case for the country's main oil fields. That's been the message for a while now in the country, as it equips itself with the means and measures required to diversify away from fossil fuel dependent outlooks and invest more into prospective technologies such as blockchain, pushing more and more into the field of renewable energy sources and positioning itself as an ideal base for multinational companies. However, for a country of its geographical size and age, there are valid questions that can be asked of the certainty behind any economic outline that's worth betting your chips on. 2020 has taught us anything. It's that the global economic landscape can be placed on its head in a staggeringly short amount of time. Like that one time oil prices dropped by almost 30% overnight, in the country amongst the most financially affected by the sudden nosedive. One thing is for certain, and that's that nothing is ever certain when it comes to finance and economics. Only form with time is the best indicator on how any institution will fare for the future ahead. Only 50 or so odd years under their belt, the United Arab Emirates has definitely proven to be the dark horse, either a stunningly bright future ahead or a stunning decline in its economic prosperity. Hopefully, we can revisit the nation in 10 or so years' time and find out just how amazingly good or bad things have become. Thank you for watching this video on the economics of the United Arab Emirates and giving this new channel a try. I appreciate each of you and would also appreciate suggestions for any other institutions worth looking into. Thanks and have a good one.